All right, let's get right into it. Today we're looking at the story of Vladimir Putin, and the source material we're drawing from really frames it as this incredible narrative, a story of struggle, of deliberate action, and, a pretty unbelievable climb to the very top.
And this whole journey really boils down to one single question. How does a kid from a crowded shared apartment end up becoming one of the most powerful people on the entire planet? To figure that out, we've got to go all the way back. And the scale of that journey is just staggering to think about. I mean, he literally starts his life in a communal flat in Leningrad. We're talking one kitchen, one bathroom, shared between multiple families. And he ends up in the Kremlin, which is the absolute symbol of Russian power. The distance between those two places is really at the heart of this entire story.
So our story really kicks off in post-war Russia. Section 1, From Flat to Kremlin. And the picture our source material paints here is of a childhood that was really shaped by two things: hardship and discipline. He was born back in 1952 in Leningrad and just grew up in a world of scarcity. Like we said, his family shared a tiny flat with other families, which was pretty normal in the Soviet Union after the war. His parents had survived the war, and they really drilled this tough sense of resilience into him. And according to the source, he definitely needed it. He was a small, skinny kid, which made him an easy target for bullies.
And this quote right here from our source, it points to a really pivotal moment. His reaction to getting picked on wasn't to hide. It was to fight back. He apparently made a very conscious choice to become strong, specifically so he could never be a victim again. And that wasn't just some kid's resolution. It was a moment that would pretty much define his entire approach to power later on.
That determination he found as a kid, well, it quickly morphed into this one single ambition, which brings us right to Section 2, the making of a spy. This is all about his laser-focused plan to get into the KGB.
Yeah, wanting to join the KGB wasn't just some vague dream for him. It was a project. The source lays out this very methodical plan. At just 12 years old, he starts martial arts to build strength and discipline. Then, academically, he gets a law degree, which was a known way to get into the agency. He even learns German, a huge skill for an intelligence officer. Every single move was a calculated step toward becoming a spy, and in 1975, he did it. He made it.
And to really get how big of a deal that was, you have to remember what the KGB was. This was the main intelligence and security organization for the entire Soviet Union. One of the most powerful and, let's be honest, most feared agencies in the world at the time. For a boy from a communal flat, this was a massive, massive leap.
So his career takes him overseas. His first big assignment was in East Germany, and this was during the really tense final years of the Cold War. The source points out that it was right here, working quietly behind the scenes, where he really sharpened his skills. Handling tricky situations, perfecting his German, skills that would turn out to be incredibly valuable when he eventually had to lead a country.
Okay, so now we're entering a time of just massive change. Section 3, a surprise ascent. This part covers his journey through the absolute chaos of the 1990s, right after the Soviet Union fell apart, and it leads to a political rise that almost nobody saw coming.
The speed of his climb up the political ladder was just breathtaking. He gets out of the KGB in 91. By 96, he's working in the government in Moscow. Just 3 years after that, President Boris Yeltsin makes him prime minister. And then, only a few months later, he's the acting president. So in less than a decade, he went from being a former spy to the most powerful person in all of Russia. And the way it all happened was just so dramatic. It was New Year's Eve, 1999, and Yeltsin just suddenly resigns. The very next day, January 1st, 2000, Vladimir Putin, a guy who most people hadn't even heard of a year before, was in charge of the entire country.
Which brings us to Section 4, the strongman's Russia. So now we're going to look at how, according to our source material, he immediately started to take some really decisive action to tackle what were seen as Russia's biggest, most urgent problems.
So once he had power, he moved fast. Our source material really frames his early presidency as a series of solutions. The economy was a mess, so he reformed taxes and used the country's oil and gas money. The oligarchs were super powerful, so he reestablished the power of the state to challenge them. The media was seen as chaotic, so he brought the big TV networks in line with the government. and he started this massive project to modernize the military and bring back its strength. Every one of these moves was about consolidating control and rebuilding the state.
But it wasn't just policy. These moves went hand in hand with a really powerful PR strategy. The source points to all those famous images we've seen: Putin riding a horse, shirtless in Siberia, flying a fighter jet, practicing judo. This wasn't just for kicks. It was about projecting a very specific image of a leader, strong, active, fearless, to a country that felt like it had been weak for far too long.
And that brings us to our last section, crafting a legacy. Here, the focus kind of shifts from solving immediate problems to this long-term vision for Russia's place in the world, and this is key for its own sense of national pride.
So on the world stage, his strategy, as our source describes it, was playing out on multiple fronts. It wasn't just about one single relationship, it was about creating a whole new balance of power. That meant building a strong alliance with China, getting Russian influence back in the Middle East, creating the Eurasian Union to form an economic bloc, and developing some serious cyber capabilities as a new kind of state power. But underneath all of that, the source claims, was this one really big goal back home: to change the national psyche. After the Soviet Union collapsed, a lot of Russians felt their country was weak, disrespected, and he set out to revive a sense of pride in Russian history, in its culture, and in its power.
And this quote, which is attributed to him in the source material, it really kind of sums up the whole leadership philosophy being presented here. It's about this belief in having unwavering conviction, being ready to make tough, often unpopular decisions, and then standing by them no matter what the rest of the world thinks.
So what we have is a story of just relentless ambition, from that crowded flat all the way to the Kremlin. It's a story of resilience and long-term strategic thinking, and it leaves us with one final and really crucial question: what does this story of power mean, not just for Russia, but for the rest of us?